Good afternoon. My name is Anthea Grant, and I am a master's student in historic preservation and conservation at the University of Florida. Today, I am at the International Research
International
Fine Cocoa Innovation Research Center in Mount Hope, Trinidad and Tobago. Today is Friday, 4th of July, and I am here and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Darin Sukha. I'm a research fellow and food technologist at the Cocoa Research Center. So I've been on staff now for 30 years, and I work in cocoa post-harvest processing, quality management, and value addition.
Okay, great. First of all, Dr. Sukha, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a very busy person, and I do appreciate your time and effort in assisting me with my research on the intangible cultural and tangible cultural heritage of cocoa farming in Trinidad and the practices such as cocoa and so on. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we begin.
All right, sure.
And how you got to this interesting field of cocoa.
So it's a very interesting story, actually. I studied, my first degree was in agriculture. And then after I did my degree, I said, okay, you know what? I learned how to grow things, so I want to learn how to process it. So I started my master's in food technology. And then it was a 2-year master's. And after the first year, you had to start a project. And I wanted to actually leave the program, and I applied for another program, and I didn't get through because I was already enrolled in this current master's.
Okay.
And the then director of the Cocoa Research Unit at that time was good friends with the program that I had applied to that I didn't get through, and they were looking for someone. And basically, he told them, I have a folder with some names of people. You can use this as a resource. And my name was on the first on the list. Okay. And they called me to ask me if I wanted a job. So I never really applied for this job. And it just so happened I was looking for a project to finish my master's. And at that time, so this is back in 1995, in 1994, some work was finished in Malaysia looking at cocoa quality, first work. And we were having some problems in Trinidad. Trinidad had just lost its market for its cocoa from World's Finest Chocolate. All of our cocoa used to go to World's Finest Chocolate in the US.
Okay.
And they stopped buying our cocoa, and they wanted to understand why. So they wanted someone to do an investigation. So there was this work that was done in Malaysia that had some new approaches. Then there was this issue in Trinidad, and they wanted someone to look at it. So I was there at the right place at the right time. I took the approaches from the new work that was done at that time from Malaysia to address the problem we were having. And that was really to find a holistic approach to understanding cocoa quality.
Right.
And that opened up Pandora's box of really understanding what are the drivers for cocoa quality and how we can optimize it, because Trinidad and Tobago is one of 4 countries from the Caribbean that is recognized by the International Fine Cocoa Organization as an exclusive producer of fine fiber cocoa. So it has great revenue potential for the country.
Who are the other countries?
Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Jamaica.
Okay.
So it was just fate, and from that now, I answered one question, and it led to a number of questions, and they said, well, okay, you can answer this as part of a PhD, where I started to look at the whole notion of the impact of the growing environment, climate, and processing on flavor to establish the notion of terroir. So the same way how we have that concept for wine, where the whole summation of the growing environment and processing and handling contributing to flavor.
Oh, wow.
My PhD was the first work to really demonstrate that for cocoa.
Wow.
And it has formed the basis of my life's work now to unravel the drivers for terroir and also to really help us understand what are the drivers for quality, how we can assess quality, and to document and standardize approaches. So I have done a lot of work now on creating standards for cocoa quality, both at the international, local, and now regional level. So I chaired the local committee to create the local cocoa standards. I helped create the international standards for cocoa, and I'm now chairing the current committee for creating regional standards for cocoa quality.
Oh, regional, but not international yet.
No. So I did the international already.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
awesome.
I'm using the international to help inform the regional.
Okay, awesome.
So it has the impact already then.
Wow.
And after, I think I've been very blessed. So I also help create or contribute towards the sort of industry guides for cocoa quality. And now I am the vice chair of the ICCO ad hoc panel for fine flavor cocoa, which is the global body for cocoa, helping countries understand what are the things they need to sort of report on to highlight the uniqueness of their cocoa to build that reputation. Wow. So I've also now bridged the gap between that and value addition. So I teach chocolate making, and I've trained almost 400 people to make chocolate from around the world.
Wow.
And I feel very proud when I see people have their businesses, and when I go and they invite me to come and I see they have their shop, and they've taken the little bit of information that we were able to give them and build on it, add their own story to it, and make it into a viable enterprise. And for me, that's the impact. By helping cocoa value chain stakeholders realize and harness the revenue potential of the cocoa value chain for a sustainable livelihood, that is what makes me feel fulfilled and happy.
That's really amazing. And of course, you know what my thesis is on. It's on the cultural aspects. And knowing what you're doing, how do you bridge the both cultural benefits and what you're doing today?
So it's a very good question, because every country that you go to, there is a cocoa culture. And cocoa is, I actually refer to cocoa as, it's like the Hotel California song by the Eagles. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. Cocoa gets under your skin. And it really is this alluring, magnetic crop that consumes you, right? And cocoa is an inextricable part of our culture and history in Trinidad.
Absolutely.
We are all here in this country for two things: cocoa and sugarcane, as part of, unfortunately, slavery and indentureship. And it is what it is.
Yes.
And I view that as a past for which we have to rise up above and build a future from.
Yeah, and what makes Trinidad unique in terms of the cultural traditions associated with cocoa farming, unique from other countries, even in the region. Like, for instance, the dancing of the cocoa. In my research, I know like neighboring islands like Grenada, I believe Dominica, they practice the dancing of the cocoa. Does it originated in Trinidad and Tobago?
Oh, right.
And how did it come to be?
So Trinidad actually historically was amongst the third largest producer of cocoa in the world. This is in the 1920s and early 30s, right?
Yeah.
So Trinidad had a very important role to play in the evolution and growth of the global cocoa sector. And in those days, quality was a bit one-dimensional. It was how the beans looked. And what led to the whole notion of dancing cocoa was to improve the physical appearance of the beans. Okay. What happens basically is that in many instances, when you process cocoa, you have to ferment it and you have to dry it. Right. And unfortunately, the peak of the crop coincides in our region with the most rainy months of the year. The sort of November, December, January period, just before the dry season starts. So you have that challenge of how to dry this cocoa in this period, and with the traditional open floor drying houses, where when you close it, you have this dark environment that would promote secondary mold growth. And with rain during the drying period, you had a slower drying rate, and that would actually contribute to secondary mold growth as well. And of course, there's the whole science behind the microbial succession that occurs during fermentation, where it ends with filamentous fungi and mold. So if you continue the process, you get those microorganisms becoming dominant. So dancing the cocoa was a physical action to remove surface mold growth that would have occurred on the cocoa beans as a result of slower drying, because of the drying method used at that time, and the fact that the ambient conditions would have been more humid.
And who would have come up with an idea like that?
Well, the same way how if you have something on your if you have a spot on something, you would try and rub it off, right? So the whole idea was, okay, this thing is on a floor drying. I need to rub off this growth from it. How do I do that? You, by physically walking, shuffling through the beans, and the beans rubbing against each other, you would remove it, because there's a lot of mucilage on the beans, and that actually sticks to your skin. So it would transfer onto the feet of the person. And the whole notion of dancing actually came about because it's a very laborious task, and you're shuffling anyway, so I might as well put a beat to it, right? To make and it goes back to our culture in Africa. When there's a tedious task to be done, what do? They sing. They sing in rhythm to the action, and it makes time go faster. The same way when we're doing something boring. I hate to iron clothes. What I do, I play music, right? So it was to take away from the drudgery of the task by adding the drumming to keep in step. So that is the origin of it, in my opinion. And it makes logical sense.
It does.
And you must remember, in those days, drumming was not allowed, because drumming was linked to as part of the whole slavery system. Drumming was not allowed, because it was used as a call for assemblage of people, and assembly was not allowed in those days under slavery. But if I am working and I have a legitimate cause to drum, as part of my job, I get the drumming out of my system, right? So it makes perfectly logical sense.
It does.
And so it served that psychological release, as well as the physical function of improving the physical appearance of the beans. And Trinidad being a leader in the cocoa industry at that time, of course the practices would have transferred to the other islands. And also, apart from the physical action of rubbing the beans together by shuffling through it, polishing also incorporated different additions, where one of the weed trees that would grow on the plantation was a plant called bocano, right? Which the dried leaves would fall down, and those leaves are very big leaves that they crumple up and they look very brown. They have actually a chocolate brown color. So what was done, and remember the concept of quality at that point in time was physical appearance, not food safety, not taste.
Right. To fetch a higher price on the market.
So it was how it looked. So they would actually soak bocano leaves in water, and the leaves would infuse this brown color to the water, and they would sprinkle this water on the beans to add to the process of shuffling through the beans.
So that would be before.
So they would add it before and then dance through the beans.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's like, when you polish shoes, you would add water to give a high gloss to it.
So it's the same concept.
Now, One other notion of dancing in cocoa that led to some practices that were not entirely desirable eventually was a practice called claying. Claying, where they would take clay, earth, and mix that in water and sprinkle that water on the beans as well, and do the same dancing action.
Along with the bucana.
Well, no, well, sometimes they might either combine it or just do it alone.
Right? Right.
So what claying would have done, you have small, well, soil residue that would add as a physical abrasive to remove the surface mold growth, but also impart a color as well. Remember, the criteria was how the beans looked.
Yes.
But also, one of the things was that beans are sold on weight. So if I add clay to the water, some of the clay would mix into the water and dry on the surface of the bean. It will add to weight. So then you would have additional weight.
Yeah.
And then practices became a bit more bizarre when people started adding oil to the water. So the beans look really nice. They look nice and shiny, right?
Oh.
But this then comes into the realm of where I enter into the industry.
The flavor.
Where taste, I remember I said we have a fine flavor heritage.
Yes.
And the basis of my work was to establish a holistic approach to quality, not just how the beans looked, but what the other elements in terms of flavor, purity. Purity encompasses physical, chemical, microbial. So so that is where, to answer the question, I think that gives a little background as to how production came about and how it evolved.
My understanding of the Trinitario and how it came about, that in itself, that hybrid, is what really gave it a taste. So that flavor, is that correct?
Right. Trinitario, by its the name Trinitario literally means native of Trinidad, right? And how that came about is also steeped in our history. When cocoa was introduced into the island after the Spanish conquest of the Americas, so let's say 1498, by the early 1500s, cocoa was introduced into Trinidad.
Wow.
And this introduction, granted it came through Venezuela into Trinidad, it was of a variety called Criollo. Criollo would have come from Central America. So we're coming down the Spanish conquest. All of the Maya countries, etc.
Mexico and so on.
So they introduced Criollo into the country. And then in 1727, there was something called a blast. History calls it a blast. That basically the trees started to die. Now, these Criollo trees, they're actually very, very fragile. They give very delicate flavors, but in the genetic sense of the term, they're homozygous recessive, meaning that they're an inbred population. So they're very delicate and fragile, right?
Okay.
So they actually want to cross-pollinate to become stronger. So what happened in 1727, we actually had a mini ice age. And so we did some forensics at that time, and we have a paper published that showed that we had a mini ice age, and that contributed to some of the decline or death that would have occurred, right? Okay. Of course, history says that also that the farmers didn't pay their tithes to the church, so God punish them, etc., right? So what the farmers of the day said was, okay, you know what? We don't want this Criollo type again to replant their fields. They wanted more robust types called Forastero. And Forastero came from the Amazon region. And one specific type of Forastero came into Trinidad, again through Venezuela, called a Melanado. A Melanado, which subsequently went across to West Africa. The Melanado type hybridized or cross-pollinated with the remnants of the Criollo population. Remember I said Criollo wants to cross-pollinate, right?
Yes.
So it cross-pollinated with the remnants of the Criollo population to give a hybrid type called Trinitario. That was very, very It was much more productive, more vigorous, more resilient. So that formed the basis of the Trinitario types. So I'm jumping forward now to the 1930s.
Okay.
So remember I said Trinidad was the third largest producer of cocoa in the world, right?
Yeah.
Now in 1928, witch's room disease entered Trinidad, and it had a devastating consequence for our industry and globally. So it was decided to set up the cocoa research scheme here in Trinidad. Now remember, we were a British colony at that time, and we had the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture, which is the precursor institution to the University of the West Indies.
Okay.
So anybody who wanted to learn about tropical agriculture used to come to Trinidad to study. So they set up the cocoa research scheme in 1928 at the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture, and that is the basis of the Cocoa Research Center where I work. So we are the oldest cocoa research center in the entire world.
Is that at UAE?
Yes. Okay. In 1962, when we became independent, the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture became University of the West Indies.
That's incredible. I did not even know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So there was a scientist who, in 1930s, who was working at that time. His name was Francis J. Pound. And he saw all this Trinitarian material in Trinidad growing. And he said, you know what? I need to understand this material better. And you know, there's always, they say that 80% of the yield from a farm comes from 20% of the trees.
Yeah.
So he wanted to identify the elite 20%. So he employed a series of selection criteria to choose the best of the original Trinitario set.
Okay.
And he selected the top 100 of that 20% of Trinidad, of the Trinitario, and he called it Imperial College Selections, ICS, 1 to 100.
Wow.
And those Trinitario clones, most of them were distributed all over the world and have formed the basis of many countries' cocoa industry. So we gave Trinitario to the world and spawned the industries of many countries.
Amazing.
So that's part of the history of what Trinidad is a land of superlatives when it comes to cocoa. And part of that breeding program would have gone to the Amazon to get material that was resistant to the witch's room disease. And it was planted right here in Trinidad. And we now curate this collection as a global collection called the International Cocoa Gene Bank.
Yeah.
And it is the world's largest and most diverse collection of cocoa varieties. And there's nothing else like it in the entire world. And if you go back to the Amazon to find these trees, you would find a city or a town.
Wow.
So that's what it is. So maybe we're going off a little bit from...
No, it's fine. But I mean, it's great information because it all ties in. It really links to the history and it speaks to the whole... It's, to me, I always consider it as an ecosystem.
Right.
You know, it's not just the agriculture, but also it's what comes from it. And one of my in my research, I discovered a really nice link of what we call cocoa piles, who came from Venezuela. Tell me a little bit more about that and how post-slavery and I guess indentureship, what part they played and what new traditions they brought to cocoa farming.
So, unfortunately, a lot of the historical plantation agriculture, well, firstly, Trinidad was one of the first countries to really employ plantation approach for cocoa farming.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? And of course, that is labor. Labor initially came from the Amerindians. Then it came from slaves. And post-slavery or post-emancipation, it came from indentureship.
Right.
Now, in a transition period between indentureship, there was a need to get more labor.
Right.
So it was opened up so that there was a call for labor that people could. So Trinidad was a land of opportunity, right?
At the time, yes.
So traditionally in the cocoa history, in the 1700s, there was a cedula of population that encouraged people to come into Trinidad to set up estates.
Right.
And a lot of the traditional cocoa families in Trinidad can trace their roots back to that cedula of population. So the Agostinis, the Vertais, all these people that came from Corsica, from France, and they actually set up here. One exception is Stallmeyer Estate. Okay. So Stallmeyer's Castle. He didn't come as part of the cedula of population. He came as a businessman. So there was a need for labor, and our closest neighbor is Venezuela.
7 miles off.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that came in, they came from Venezuela, and with them, they brought their unique practices. Firstly, they brought their culture. They brought their language. They brought their culture. They brought their food, and we still see evidence of that today. We have parang. We have pastel.
What is parang for people who may be listening from abroad and international who don't know what parang is?
Parang is actually festive Christmas music that is sung in Spanish that narrates the nativity story,
right,
as well as the festivities around surrounding that in terms of family spending time together in a very unique melody and with the cuatro as the instrument.
So what is coco payols?
Coco payol literally refers, so the people that came from Venezuela, they were colloquially referred to as payols. I don't know the origin of what that word means, payol, but because they worked in cocoa, they call them coco payols.
Okay.
Right? So that is that linkage there then.
Yeah.
And one place that still holds very strong that tradition is Lupino, where they have that. And so the same practice, again, so there's a term called acculturation, where every generation would take the best practices from the environment around them and make it into their own. So part of the estate practice was dancing the cocoa. So now we had new people coming into the space.
Right.
But we had the practice, the standard operating procedure of the estate was to dance the cocoa.
So parang became part of that
So
dance.
instead of drumming now, which was part of the African and even the East Indian linkage, we had parang.
Okay.
So we had the associates. It was the same rationale, just different music.
And then I guess it evolved eventually into like a fusion of all the African drumming, the parang on the estate itself. And in her book, Cocoa Piles of Trinidad, Sylvia Kubal-Singh was also speaking about there were, besides the dancing of the cocoa, there were storytelling and cockfighting and drinking of rum and around in the estates at that time. Could you tell me more about that?
Sure. So, cocoa is actually a very consuming crop to work with, right?
Yes.
And sometimes when you are, let's say when you're drying cocoa, you might need to and some estates, they actually had artificial dryers where they would have heaters to heat the air that would flow over the cocoa bean.
But that came later on, of course, right?
Well, so I'm talking 1940s, 50s here.
Oh.
Trinidad is very advanced, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so early.
Yeah, so I have plans for some of the early cocoa houses that had artificial drying systems. So you had people who had to work throughout the night to dry cocoa, right? And so what do I do if I have to work all night drying something where I have to turn it and so on? I want to keep myself warm. I need to take the edge off of this nocturnal task. So what I do, I get a bottle of rum or whatever I brew. You would have fermented and distilled your own bush rum. And I have my partners around me, my friends, and we will tell stories and drink rum and dry cocoa.
Wow.
So it involves that. Now, what is interesting in this whole dancing the cocoa thing, right?
Yes.
Is the gender separation.
Okay.
Where the role of women, a chemical impurity or physical impurity entering into the bean. Now remember, cocoa beans are what? They are a food ingredient to make chocolate.
Yes.
Now, if you go to a warehouse in Europe that handles fine flavor cocoa, once a cocoa bean touches the floor, it is not used to make chocolate anymore.
Wow.
It's picked up and it goes into a sling that is handled separately.
Okay.
Right? So that is the reality in terms of the food safety considerations and part of the holistic appreciation of quality. So from that context, we need to rethink the whole approach to dancing the cocoa. Now, what we need to work on is how we optimize drying now to prevent the original cause for the need for dancing cocoa, which is secondary mold growth. So which is why it is we're looking at how we optimize drying processes and fermentation and drying processes to prevent the onset of secondary mold growth. So you don't have to polish cocoa again or dance cocoa.
So, and these are like new buildings that so you're no longer using the cocoa drying houses, the traditional houses to dry
cocoa? No, we are trying to move away from that.
Okay.
Where with those houses, once it's raining, you have to close it.
Yeah.
So you have no drying, you have a dark environment, you have galvanized roofs, and the last thing present in a cocoa bean at the end of fermentation is acetic acid, vinegar. So these galvanized roofs, over years, the galvanized coating would be corroded off, and the metal roof would start to rust from the inside. Okay. And you're rolling these galvanized roofs now, and small pieces of rust would fall into the cocoa beans. So I've seen this now. One other thing, after destoning, beans have to go through a process where they pass over a magnet. And you'll be amazed the fine iron filings from the galvanized roofs. Oh my God. So we moved away from having that structure. Now we're actually looking at having greenhouse type dryers that are covered with UV resistant polyethylene, like greenhouse, that allows you to dry cocoa when it's raining. It protects it from the rain, but allows UV radiation to come through. Because when it's raining, it's not pitch black, right? You still have sunlight.
UV.
And also we have assisted drying as well, where just like with a clothes dryer that you have at home, you have warm air blowing over the beans. So now we are looking at ways to assist the drying by having airflow across the beans and natural ventilation in the drying system. So I'm actually working on a paper now that is going to publish and present that information.
And I look forward to really reading it. So now this brings me in a sort of a quandary because I'm sort of advocating for the dance of the cuckoos, dancing of the cuckoos, so that for generations to come, they would know about it and be able to still practice it. One of the recommendations I have in my thesis is to get it nominated somehow through the government or so to go onto the UNESCO Intangible Heritage Constellation. I don't know if you know about it, but it's like cultural traditions all over the world in different areas of agriculture and dance and so on. And so to like really nominate it as a unique tradition in Trinidad. Having regard to what you said, it now puts me because I still like to see it. So from you, maybe the cocoa beans that aren't good, they can use that perhaps, right?
Well, what I would say, right? We need to recognize that dancing the cocoa is part of our cocoa history, part of our cocoa culture. What is the intrinsic value of that? The intrinsic value of that resides in agritourism. Also, part of that cocoa history is our food. We'd have had the African influence, East Indian influence, the cocoa piles, the Spanish influence.
Yes.
So we can have a new brand of tourism, agri-culinary tourism,
Okay.
where the dance, that process, takes on a historical element, part of the narrative of cocoa. I just came back from Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
And where I went, the place had a number of tribes that formed the population, right?
Okay.
And the 6 main tribes, they created a tourist sort of experience to help visitors appreciate the food and culture of these main tribes.
Right.
And what was part of that whole experience was seeing the physical space, how they used to live, the long houses, and the difference between how it was constructed for the different tribes.
Yeah.
The food, each tribe had a different thing that they offered. One tribe had honey from the stingless bees. One tribe they used to cook in bamboo. And but each tribe had their own way of dressing and their own food and their own dance. And the dance linked to their culture became part of the experience.
Oh.
So I see it having a very important role to play in our tourism sector, which is economic diversification element and part of the experience that transcends the Caribbean region. So yes, we recognize that some of the practices associated with dancing the cocoa may not be appropriate in the context of current regulations for food safety, but it has a cultural and undeniable cultural value that we could further leverage to create a parallel economic activity for the cocoa spaces.
I'm from Trinidad, so I know most people. Trinidad is mostly known for its carnival, and some of the other food, the more popular food, and so on. But a lot of people don't know, I believe, the history of cocoa in Trinidad and the dance and so on. And so, yes, I definitely agree that it could be used to leverage. And so, what are your recommendations? While you want to still protect, operate under the health safety, but you want to keep that intrinsic value.
So I think it has a role to play in as part of capturing the history and how it is presented to the young generation, and it's part of. It should be protected. It should be recognized as part of what we used to do, and it has a real historical
even
relevance.
Taught in schools.
It has a real historical relevance, and I mentioned the whole issue of drumming and what was not allowed, and so on, and it was a form of passive aggression release, right? Right, and a place where people could find future wives. You see, and no, honestly, right? So it has a cultural significance, and I think needs to be protected. It has to be packaged in as part of something else. Absolutely. And I mentioned the agri-culinary tourism element, where you recognize the history and what are the important elements of that: the food, the clothes, the music.
What kind of clothes they used to wear?
It varied according to the East Indian women. They wore their orni, the traditional bit, and they had a top and a skirt.
Right.
And the African women, they had their head ties.
Okay.
And again, even the clothes served a function, and the clothes served a very, very important
function. And the reason
why
I ask is because in Charlottesville, Tobago, every year, which I'm going to, they're going to feature the dancing of the cocoa. And a lot of them use dry leaves when they're dancing. Do you know the significance of that?
Dry leaves on what? On their feet?
On their head. They use it as part of their dress wear.
I don't know about that one. I know my grandmother, she grew up on a cocoa estate in Maracas Valley, right? And so she grew up on a cocoa estate, dancing cocoa and so on. And I know that they would always have their head tied because it was part of the culture not to expose your hair.
Okay.
And also, you're working in the field, you don't want to get stuff in your hair, bugs and all of that.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was their skirts. The skirts, very long skirts, going down to their ankles. And they oftentimes they were multi-layered. So they had different layers. So there was like a petticoat, and then they would have...
Yeah.
But what was interesting part about the skirts was that they had very deep pockets. Very deep pockets. Because I remember as a child going into my grandmother's pocket to try and get a mint. So she had a very special mint that she used to use called Extra Strong.
Okay.
And as a child going into this pocket and having to reach way down because the skirts was a form of carrying stuff.
Which would be cocoa.
They could carry fruits from the field, let's say limes, lemons, or if they find something that they could cook later
fascinating.
on.
Yeah.
So remember, they're working all day in the field. And they still have to go home and cook for many children.
Families and stuff,
Right? So they can't carry stuff in a bag because the estate owner will say, what's that you have in your bag? Show me that. Right? And take it from your pay or whatever you used to get, right? Or we said if it's slavery, you get flogged or something, right?
Yeah.
So your skirts became a mode of transportation.
Oh, wow.
Hidden transportation, I remember that,
Wow. That is really, really, really fascinating.
So it was also a form of attraction. So the young girls, they would have their skirts, they'd move their skirts and so on as part of the... Same way when people dance with their costumes for carnival.
Yeah.
They would move their skirt to...
Yeah, like dancing the belly.
Yeah. So it was a form of teasing, a form of alluring, a form of expression, artistic expression.
Oh, that is really... I mean, really super fascinating.
So it served a function.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot that we need to preserve, and for sure, 100%, preserving the whole notion of dancing the cocoa and why it was done and how we have evolved from that is part of the story as well. And understanding that served a role in history at that point in time. And because in many estates, they started introducing machines to polish cocoa, in Trinidad. So we were one of the first countries. We were one of the first countries to have machines to mechanically polish cocoa. Do you know why? Because we had so much cocoa that we were producing. It was not feasible to have humans dance through all this cocoa to polish it.
Right.
So these machines were called rotary activators. It consisted of a circular, like a drum receptacle for the beans to go into.
Okay.
There was a central arm that came up with a cog on it. And radiating from that would be 4 arms. And then they would have a perpendicular, like plow sheaves going through with wooden plowshares going through, right? Yeah. That would move the beans. Right. So it would circulate, it would rotate. So they would blow air through it, and the unit would turn and turn very slowly. And what was happening was that how these shares, the sheaves were oriented. So you would have like one here, and on the other arm you would have not in the same line. So the beans would actually crisscross and move. So you would achieve the same physical action, and they would actually add water. This time they would have a hose and add water, right? Okay. And that's how they would polish the cocoa.
Do they still use, even with the advanced technology, do they still use the
machines?
Back no?
No. Okay. So that's it. But if you want to see one of those machines that I just described, it's at the San Juan Estate in Vancouver.
Okay.
And they use it to polish and to finish dry, and they have a gas fired burner underneath to blow hot air through.
What? I would love to see that. For sure.
So I can give you the number to call the guy.
Thank you.
To arrange.
Thank you, Dr. Sukha. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Really talking to you. One last question, and it's not really related to the dance and the cocoa, but I do want to find out now the status of cocoa production in Trinidad. I know that there has been a resurgence. Who are the current players in the market now, and like where are the cocoa beans being exported to now?
Right. So the fortunes of cocoa is it's funny in that we have a ready market for our cocoa beans at a premium price. The decline of the industry is a classic tale of socioeconomic challenges linked to our mental perception and social perception to agriculture. Parents don't grow their children up and say, okay, you are going to manage a cocoa estate, right? So we had a decline in agriculture in general.
Okay.
What we have now is we have young professionals who went to university or whatever. They're inheriting cocoa land from their ancestors, from their grandfathers and from their fathers, etc.
Okay.
So they have economic means. They're doctors, lawyers, engineers, and so on. They would have inherited these lands now, and some of them, sadly, they will sell it into housing. A few of them, they actually want to they want to recapture this element. And what we do, this is where the chocolate making training comes in, where these people actually come and do chocolate making training. And I've had people from cardiac surgeons all the way to undersea oil field welders doing chocolate making training because they have cocoa estate. They have family who have cocoa estate. They're planning for their retirement, right?
So they're interested in selling chocolates,
yes,
rather than selling the beans.
They want to make chocolate. So they want to sell beans and they want to make chocolates as well.
Oh, okay.
And so that segment has grown so much in the last decade that consumes almost 100 metric tons of cocoa that we produce.
And how much does it contribute to the GDP?
I don't have a figure for that.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that out of a good production of 400 to 500 metric tons, 100 metric tons of that goes into local value addition. So we have between 300 to 400 metric tons available for export. And this export goes mainly to Europe. We have brokers that buy beans, but it also goes to the US. Now, Trinidad is an old origin.
Yeah.
Right? Old origin. Is like a Rolls Royce, right? And a lot of the young bean to bar chocolate companies, they view Trinidad as an old origin. You know, it has a stodgy appeal.
Right. So
they want to go to the more sexy, exciting origins like Uganda, Kenya,
exotic,
right? Exotic sounding things, you know, Tarapoto, and but Trinidad has a pedigree and a history, a story that is undeniable. And part of our job now is to develop this story, capture this story, and link it to a brand. So that's why it is we are trying to develop a geographical indication for Trinidad and Tobago cocoa.
Before I did my, and that's amazing, before I did my research and whilst I was living in Trinidad, I would from time to time see in the news that Trinidad did really well on the international competitions with cocoa.
Right.
Consistently every year.
Cocoa of excellence, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many right now, to the best of your knowledge, cocoa estates are there, like small holder farms?
Right. So I'll give you 3 points. One, the Cocoa of Excellence program, I would have started that program back in 2008, right? So I chair the technical committee for that program, and Trinidad is one of the few countries that, the country that has had the most wins at the International Cocoa Awards. And why is that? Our Trinitario cocoa, Trinidad Trinitario cocoa, has a unique combination of complexity, harmony, and balance.
I like that.
Right? That is undeniable in our pedigree. In terms of how many farmers we have now, I think we have about 400 to 500 registered cocoa farmers. How much of that is active? We'll have to, so you'll have to talk to the cocoa development company for that.
Okay.
Which is
and they're still active.
Which is probably another company that another stakeholder that you should talk to.
Yeah, I will. You have a contact for them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so that brings us to the end.
Okay. That's good.
Of this really great interview, and I can't tell you how much I really enjoyed just learning so much more about the cocoa, and I do appreciate you and your time, and thank you so very much.
Welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.